So in this section, we'll be discussing the objectives and the risks involved to the procedure of the forensic autopsy. Now, as I've already discussed, whenever there is a procedure, whether it is a surgical procedure or if it is any intervention that is involving any surgeries, whether it is in a living or in a dead person, the people performing it are always at risk. They're always at stake of carrying the infections along with them. So we should get a core knowledge to what are the infections and what are the safety precautions that has to be carried out by the people performing the autopsy procedures. Now, in this section, we'll be discussing, of course, the objectives of the autopsy and the risks and hazards in the autopsy room. When we are talking about the autopsy room, it's not only the doctor that is performing the procedure. It is always the lab staff that is present over there, the police custody staff that is present over there, the relatives if they want to be present over there. Now, the risk and hazards in the autopsy room, the precautions and the risk of infections are moreover discussed in detail in the later part of this section. Now, the objectives of an autopsy. To make a positive identification of the body and to assess the size, physique, and nourishment of the deceased. Now, whenever we perform the autopsy procedure, first of all, the mainstay to this procedure is the positive identification of the deceased. This was the main objective to perform the autopsy procedures. Now, there are certain words that has to be used. There are certain terminologies that has to be used. For example, leanness, obesity, emaciations. These are used whenever we are describing the size or the physique of a person. The height has to be basically mentioned over here, whether he's a short-heighted person on a general view, on an external examination, and the nourishment of the person, whether he's looking dehydrated, whether he's looking emaciated. All these terminologies has to be used for the medical officer that is performing the post-mortem examination. Now, secondly, to determine the cause of death or in the newborn whether live birth occurred. So there are certain signs, for example, Hagar's sign on the ultrasounds, which basically establish the live births. So to determine the cause of death or in the newborn whether the live birth has occurred, it is the mainstay whenever we are performing the medico-legal autopsies. Now, to demonstrate all the external and the internal abnormalities, malformations and diseases are highlighted over here. And any club foot, any deformities in the disease, basically, whenever there is some joint problems or any deformities, they can be confused with rigor mortis. So we have to evaluate whether it is a deformity that is basically making us unable to flex the knees and the joints, or whether it is the rigor mortis that is establishing. And because it is the mainstay whenever we are calculating the post-mortem time interval. The internal abnormalities are, of course, whenever we are studying the organs one by one, the heart, the brain, the kidney, we'll be discussing them, the internal abnormalities of each of these organs in detail. Now, to retain the relevant organs and tissues as evidence, as I've already told you, the body samples, the tissue samples, they are sent to the chemical pathologist, and he examines these samples in details. And then he finds out the relevant, if there is some poisoning, if there are any cases of poisoning, there is a sufficient evidence that can be found in the liver. It can be found in the kidneys as well, because these are basically the organs where the metabolisms of all of these poisons are taking place. So we'll find some sort of evidence in these organs. Now, to obtain the photographs and videos for the evidential and the teaching use. So whenever we are, basically these are all the mainstays and these are the new technologies that are basically coming into play during the performance of the autopsies. You should have a digital camera, and you have to obtain the photographs and videos wherever possible while you're performing the autopsy procedures for the teaching use and for the teaching purposes, of course. Now, to determine the mode of dying and the time of death, where necessary and possible. Now, the mode of dying, as I've already told you, whether it is suicidal, whether it is homicidal, or whether it is accidental. Sudden deaths are already classified in all of these categories. Any type of death, of course, is classified in these categories. And after a sudden death, we are performing an autopsy, and we have to keep in our mind that we have to identify the mode of death and the cause of death, of course, and the time of death. So the calculations of the post-mortem time interval, they are the mainstay for the performance of the autopsy examination, because they basically help in the criminal investigations. They help the police custodies to help the investigations where necessary and possible. Now, to provide a full written report of the autopsy findings. Now, it basically varies from region to region according to the legislations, according to the local laws of the country. We have to basically give a full report in a written form, and there has to be a diagrammatic representation to the whole procedure. All the external examination, the injuries are marked in a full pattern in a diagrammatic way, and they have to be marked very neatly, and it has to be very sufficient, and all the details have to be put inside the written content of the autopsy report. To offer an expert interpretation of these findings. Now, whenever you are basically investigating a case, there is a whole forensic team that is working along with you. So you don't have to be basically start acting as a late Sherlock Holmes and start making comments on things that you're not expert in. Of course, first of all, you have to just stick on to the specialty that you are focused on. You don't have to give unnecessary details while writing an autopsy report. You don't have to give any statements regarding the whole scenario if not asked. Now, to detect, describe and measure any external and internal injuries. So one by one, we'll be discussing how we are going to discuss the external injuries as well as the internal injuries in detail. External injuries, of course, they have their own values, the size, the shape, and the location. There are certain landmarks, and we have to use all these terminologies while we are writing an autopsy report. So these are the whole objectives. There are certain objectives, and I think now you're quite clear about why are we performing this autopsy, why are we opening up a dead body, to get all this information which is of particular help to give justice to the citizens, and to basically make an identification of a dead body, if it is mutilated, if it is deformed, or if it is severely burnt. Now, to restore the body to the best possible cosmetic condition before the release to the relatives. So it is of an ethical point, and we have to keep this in our mind that we have to restore it to a certain cosmetic condition and then hand it over to the relatives, not in a state in which they will be debilitated after seeing their loved ones. Now, to obtain samples for the chemical, toxicological, and genetic analysis, microbiological and histological examinations, and any other necessary investigations. Now, the risks and hazards involved in an autopsy room. The risks and hazards involved in an autopsy room by the people performing this procedure are, of course, the infections and the physical risks due to the injuries. Of course, if they are dealing with any electric saws or any scalpels and blades, they can basically physical harm themselves. Now, physical injuries, as I've already told you, it can be due to the sharp instruments, it can be sharp bony fragments, it can be due to dangerous foreign objects, and lifting heavy loads or slipping due to the slippery floors, and the electrocushions. Whenever we are using any electrical instruments, for example, an electric saw, there's always a hazard to the electrocushions. So all these hazards are the physical risks to the injuries, the sharp instruments, the bony fragments, the foreign bodies, if they're retained by the deceased person, and if we are trying to remove it, they can basically cause physical damage to the person performing the autopsy procedures. And you can always slip if the floor is slippery, as there's always melting after. There's always an ice containers where we keep the dead bodies, and it can cause any slipperiness on the floors. Now, what are the precautions that basically can be taken while we are performing the autopsy procedures? They are, first of all, the awareness. The doctor who is performing the procedure, he should be well aware of all of these risks and hazards, and the appropriate designs of the facility. Wherever we perform a post-mortem examination, there has to be a proper mortuary table. The instruments have to be aligned in a particular way, and there should be a discipline throughout the facility. The adoption of safe working practices and the proper supervision and management. Of course, there should be a properly supervised staff that is helping out the doctor, and the management should be highly trained, and the risk of infections. Now, moving on to the risk of infections, the pathogens can be acquired through skin injuries. So as I've already told you, there is a risk of the physical injury because of the handling with the sharp instruments. For example, the scalpels, the blades, they are used while performing this autopsy procedure. And so there is a high risk of pathogens that can basically penetrate through all of these skin injuries. There are occupationally acquired infections and pre-autopsy testing. Now, pre-autopsy testing, we measure the risk-benefit ratio, and we can get the femoral artery blood samples, and they can be sent to the laboratory, and they will get the results, of course, in 1 and 2 hours, and then we can perform the autopsy procedure after getting the results from the blood reports. Now, refrigeration of the corpse. Refrigeration of the corpse, sometimes it basically hinders the viral complications, and if there is any viral infection in the deceased person, for example, the HIVs, the hepatitis, but still there are some evidences in which even after the refrigeration, the viral multiplication process went on, and so still there is some kind of risk of infections in these cases as well. So the common infections, what are the common infections that can be encountered by a doctor or by all the lab staff and the people present over there are the HIV, of course, then the tuberculosis, the hepatitis, and the anthrax, plague, Creutzfeldt-Jakob syndrome, and Marburg syndrome. Green monkey disease is one of the infectious diseases that can be carried to the people performing these autopsy procedures. So all these infections have to be kept in mind. All of the physical injuries that can be encountered by the people performing the autopsies, they have to be kept in mind, and we have to take all the prophylactic procedures to basically hinder the risk of infections. So this is a mortuary table in an autopsy room. So in this section, basically, we dealt with the different types of autopsies. What are the risks? What are the hazards which has to be faced by the people performing these autopsy procedures? And how can we prevent these accidents from happening? So all these knowledge has to be the core knowledge to the people performing, and to be at all the people which are at stake to these procedures. That was the end to this section. Thank you for watching sqadia.com.